I mean, is that
It's you.
inspirational for you, Jake?
Yes, yeah, it pumps me up. It gets me motivated. I think it's a little, jam to set the mood.
I feel like I'm back at like a Metallica concert or something. I haven't paid attention to the actual backing track in a while. I was like, oh yeah, okay,
Yeah,
I can jam out to that.
it's in stock audio. I'd like to say I recorded it, but
All right. Well, welcome everyone to this week's episode of Learn from My Mistake. I am one of your hosts, Marie Baginski, with my co-host, Jake Remillard. What? How's it going, Jake?
I'm doing good today. I'm doing good. We are kind of getting into some new schedule stuff with the kids. Things are there's an ebb and flow to all of that, but overall, yeah, I'm doing good, Marie. Thanks for asking.
Good. All right. So this week, our special guest is Victoria Mendez, who I had the pleasure of spending some time with at our last boardroom event. Woman of boardroom, like what?
What's that noise? You guys have a noise, don't you?
What? Well, I kind of shared my, Xena Warrior Princess cry one time with the group.
She
I
did.
said, if you ever need a little, if you're ever feeling a little nervous and you need some confidence before you do something, just yell out, ay, 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 ay. It's perfect. But anyway, Victoria, thank you for being our guest this week.
Yes, thank you, Marie and Jake, for having me. Super excited.
Yeah. So for anyone listening in, tell us a little bit about your story, how you got started in real estate, what you're focused on in real estate.
Sure, absolutely. So as you mentioned, Victoria Mendez, I currently am the CEO, founder, and owner of Downtown Financial Group. So we're a boutique mortgage company on the real estate side. So we deal with all the money. I'm the money queen when it comes to that stuff. So what I did when I got started, I used to actually work for the bank. I worked for JP Morgan for 13 years, been in the financial services industry since '03. So I've seen all kinds of markets, including the one that we're in right now.
Ooh.
And the way I got into the brokerage side was I had a friend of the family say, hey, you know what, Victoria, you're doing a lot of traveling. You're going, 23 different states that you're covering. Do you miss home? And I said, you know what? I kind of do, right? So at JP Morgan, I did everything from being the bank teller to a corporate sales trainer across the country. So I covered all 23 states that JP Morgan was in, and I helped over 5,000 people in training. But Marie and Jake, I got to tell you, the first year that you're doing it, you're like, yeah, they're flying me out to New York, Miami. It's this glamorous job. The second year, you're like, okay, I'll go to New York or Miami. And then the third year, you're like, Marie, do you want New York or Miami? Because I just want to stay home. Right. So yeah, after that, I had my daughter, and my daughter was 3 at the time. And while I would be gone for, maybe 4 days, 3 days out of the week, she says, Mommy, are you going to be gone for 100 days again? And that was it, you guys. Like that at that point was like, talk about the jab through the heart.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it was 3 to 4 days. To her, it was 100. So I had to make a change.
Wow.
And yeah. And so I took up, my husband's friend on the brokerage route, and he says, come over, take over my company. I want to retire. And I said, absolutely. That sounds like a great fit. I'm looking to explore and take a lot of my corporate, background into the wild, wild west, as I call it. I said, so why not? And fast forward 6 months into it, I said, all right, we're going to start talking about what the transition looks like. He says, Victoria, why would I transition you out? You increased our revenue over 50% year over year in 6 months. I'm not going to retire anymore. So I left my 13-year career, talk about security, pension, like all the things, medical benefits, everything for commission, like commission only, wild, wild west. Like that was it. And I didn't know how much money you can make, right? Because I was in the corporate mentality of, I made 6 figures. Oh my God, I made it. Right.
Right.
And then I told him, I said, well, if you're not going to retire, I'm just going to be a loan officer. I'm just going to go into production and do what I can. So I remember, you guys, I saw my first $30,000 check in 1 month. And again, I came from the '08 market where everything crashed, right? At first, one moment people are buying bottles in the clubs and, partying it up. And then everyone's like, oh no, we're recycling cans now, right?
Right.
So I remember getting my first $30,000 check and I said, oh my goodness, this is going to go away. I need to go back into corporate. Like, I got scared of the money.
Wow.
And yeah, and I went back and I was a corporate recruiter and trainer, director for Century 21, and I got onto the realty side. So I went from the loan finance side to the realty side,
Okay.
and very quickly realized this was not for me. And ends up, fast forward, I get fired from that job because I was still in the loan world. And then I said, oh my God, I'm going to, my husband, I remember the day. He's like, how was work, honey? I said, it was great. I got fired. He's like, wait, what? And at the time, I was already looking into building Downtown Financial Group with a partner. And we ended up building the company. And, fast forward, partnerships didn't align in about a year in. And we decided to part ways. And I took the company to where it is now. So we hit our first 7 figures 3 years in. And we're consistently, even in this market, we're at that 7-figure mark and we're headed for 8. We're helping families create generational wealth. And that's the scoop now.
That's quite a journey.
Yeah, that's where we're at today. So now I get to help families, create generational wealth from a finance perspective. We look at the strategy. Now I'm also an investor. So that's how Marie and I met, was through Boardroom. And for me, I work on the STRs because I was burned on the long terms. I remember I had to do my first eviction. And that, in the state of California, that is not fun.
No, I did my first eviction in the state of New York, which is basically the same crazy laws. So I feel your pain. I feel it.
Yeah. So,
10.
I learned from that mistake that, some people are cut out for the long-term strategy and you're okay waiting, and others just don't want to deal with it. And I'm one of those that I don't want to deal with it. I'm okay weathering the storm and shouldering a little bit of seasonality in the months to determine whether or not I want a short-term or a long-term.
Is California still home base for you?
It is, yeah. So I do business in California and New York, 2 of the toughest states in the country. But home base is I'm based out of LA.
Okay, sweet. Jake's coughing over there. Yeah, so you're not too far from me. I can come visit you in LA.
Yay.
So tell me, what is that like now? So your day-to-day, you are running Downtown Financial Group, which is basically a mortgage brokerage, right? Are you guys focused more on investors, or private, first-time home owners? Kind of what is your business structure or client typically?
Yeah, so a lot of our bread and butter is first-time buyers. I got into this business because I had a crappy loan officer, and had I not learned banking or been in the banking industry, I probably would have gotten taken advantage of. And so for me, that was one of the reasons why I got into the game was, hey, I want other people to not be taken advantage of and at least learn the basics, right? So we primarily focus on first-time home buyers, upgrades. We do work with investors. So everything from short-term to long-term to mid-term investors. We also work on the private money sector side. And we have a lot of our business, primarily mine, is helping entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs, they don't have the easiest, many aren't bankable. And so I have to think outside the box a little bit more, be creative. And because I'm an entrepreneur myself, I get it. I know the pains, I know the loopholes in addition to the pain.
Yeah.
So actually, if I can, typically on the show, we've actually had people talk about exclusively their fuck ups and how that's turned into their learnings and where they are now. But you mentioned something about maybe, potentially being taken advantage of if you didn't learn all the things that you had learned. So if we could, for a minute, maybe just talk about some of the mistakes that people could make, or just like lack of due diligence, just not knowing some of the things that you know now? What would that look like?
Oh man, there's a whole bunch. So number one, get everything in writing. Like I just kind of took his word for it. It was a friend of the family. I just believed it. I didn't have, it was kind of that like gentleman's handshake and that was it. But at the end of the day, when you're making people money, no, you got to get everything in writing. So number one, do your due diligence in anything, right? Whether it's investments, whether it's partnerships, whether it's work offers, get it in writing. Number one. Number two, especially from a female perspective, right? I work in a pretty male dominated industry. um, Encourage your seat at the table. Like no one's going to give it to you, right?
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things is, I think for us as females, as women, we don't ask for what we want, right? Like I remember a good mentor of mine said, no one's going to care more about your paycheck than you. No one's going to come and say, Victoria, you did a great job, let me give you a $50,000 raise. No, go ask for it, go get it. And for me, once I had that kind of aha moment, I just stopped asking for permission and just started asking for what I wanted. So
That's
I would say
really good
the due
advice.
diligence. Yeah, the due diligence for sure. Work-life integration, right? Because I'm a woman, I'm a mom, I'm a wife. A big thing in when I first started the company was I wanted to outwork everybody. Like, and Jake, I'm talking about 16-hour days. Like my days would be, I'd come in, I'd drop my kids off at school, I'd go to work. At 5 o'clock, I would leave, go home, make dinner, go back to the office at 9 p.m., stay till 1 a.m., and then go back and do it all over again. And I thought that was the badge of honor. I was like, hell yeah, I'm the baddest person out there because I'm going to
I'm a
outwork
hustler.
Yeah.
I'm a hustler, like I'm a baddie, right? And then my husband said, hey, you're working more hours than you were back at Chase. And the whole reason why you were supposed to be an entrepreneur was to be home, and you're not. And I'm not happy. Our kids miss you. And yes, guys, I remember walking around. I had $150,000 checks in my bag that I did not even have time to go to the bank for, because I was just grind, work. And where I thought I was spending like those 2-3 hours making dinner and having dinner was enough for my family, it wasn't at all. My husband felt like a single parent. He felt like a single person in the marriage. It wasn't fair to me. It wasn't fair to them. I was burning out. I was losing my hair. I was like a hot mess. So, and again, I think, again, I'm Hispanic. So a lot of our culture is like, you got to outwork people, right? In order to make the cut. And that's such bullshit. Like, it's such bullshit. And you can't scale that. You can't, everyone has a bandwidth. You're going to tap out and burn out. And so when I realized, I made a lot of money, but I didn't have time. People are either chasing in the beginning of the entrepreneurship journey freedom of money, freedom of time, or just plain freedom, right? And for me, I was on that chase of freedom of money. But then when I got the money, I didn't even know what to do with it. Like, I'm walking around with $150,000 checks. And I remember a client, he's like, you must make a lot of money because you work a lot. I said, yeah, but I don't have time to spend it. He said, that's okay. Just give it to me and I'll spend it.
And you're like, wait, that's not how this works.
Yeah, right.
Like,
So
hold on. I think I'm doing something wrong here.
So you're talking about like outworking everybody, and yeah, so many points that you just brought up are so relatable, right? It's incredibly important. Even me, like I just implemented Tuesday, middle of the day, I carved out like several hours. We do like a date day, thanks to Marie actually, because she inspired me to do that. Her and her husband do like a designated date night. Well, I have two young kids. One's 2, the other's 1. And they go to bed really early. We can't like just have a babysitter put them down. We could, but we don't want to.
Yeah.
So we do a date day. And the first time I did that, I felt so guilty. I felt horrible, like gut-wrenchingly terrible about going and leaving the company running without me being there. But now it's completely turned the whole the work-life balance exists. My relationship with my wife is getting stronger, my kids and everything, like we're spending more intentional time later in the day with them. So I love that you brought that up. So what did the company structure look like at that point where you were doing those 16-hour days with like presumably multiple $150,000 checks in your purse? Oh no, we lost her. I was hoping she was just like
I know. I was like, hopefully it's just the video because I know she's on her phone,
yeah.
but she's jumping back in. Okay.
Okay, cool.
I don't know what happened there.
Okay. We lost you for a second, but you're back.
So you're saying date night, guilty,
yeah.
conscious?
Yep. We that's completely, it's in a 180. It feels amazing now. Like the kids, the home relationship, everything's going great. Great point that you brought up there. But I wanted to ask when you were still working those 16-hour days and even making that transition, what did the company structure look like? What type of, what was the employee, what did the org chart look like?
Yeah. First,
Uh-oh.
I know. I'm like, wait, her
All right.
face, her
Fool
face
me,
went away
fool
again.
me once, fool me twice.
The org chart didn't even exist, right? Like there was no org chart. It was myself, an assistant, and a processor. And even getting an assistant was tough for me, like to delegate and decide to hand over things that I myself wanted to do was a big challenge. So I didn't, that was tough because I wanted, again, that badge of honor, right? I wanted to do everything. I could do everything myself. I could go ahead and help people in regards to like it be done my way. And so when it wasn't that, and I saw that the person that I hired could do the job better than I was doing it. Like all of the admin stuff, everything whatsoever, they could do a better job than I could. So it was a relief after at some point. I was like, oh my goodness, there's people that can actually like, and she enjoyed it. I hate the admin stuff, like putting in the application, all the data entry stuff. I hated doing that. And guys, like she would relish into it. She'd say, give me more. Like, what else do you got? And I was like, are you okay? Yeah. But that was like the turning point for me to realize that there are people out there that enjoy doing the things that you hate doing and are better at it. So when I learned that concept, that's when the people skill kind of shifted in that regard in the business. And I said, you know what? I need more ops people. I need more sales people. And then slowly but surely, like I got my marketing, I got a marketing intern that then turned into my salesperson. I got my virtual assistant, which then turned into my processing manager. So there were just all these layers that when you got the people person, right? And I think a big mistake that I made in the beginning was I didn't hire soon enough. And what I mean by that is like, you're thinking like you could still do it. But when you start losing clients, when your turn times aren't the same, when your quality of service isn't the same because you think you still have the same business, then you start hiring bodies because you're just treading water, right? Your business is just treading water. And then you're like, oh my goodness, I just need one body, anybody. I don't care if you're good. I don't care if you're talented. I just need a body to park in here. The problem is that you invest resources, you invest time, you invest money. Like the average cost to hire and onboard somebody in my company is $20,000. So imagine if I just hired a random body and in 3 months I have to let them go because they're not the right body. I just threw $20,000 down the drain, not to mention the opportunity cost that I have in order to make more money, because there's a difference between regular capital and human capital. And when you start to scale your company, the human capital becomes so much more important because they now become your savings account or they now become your revenue streams. And now you have an ROI on that. You have to treat it like an investment. It's no different than if you were to decide to buy a house. When you decide to buy a house as an investment, you're not buying the first house you see, right? And sometimes we get into that like just really hustler mentality that we're like, I just need to buy a house. My landlord's kicking me out. I just need to buy a house, right? I don't care if it's in shambles. All the red flags are there. Who cares? But then you get into the house and then you realize, oh crap, this definitely is a trap house. Like I shouldn't have bought it, right? So I think for me,
I love the point. I love the point of this because it's really bringing up like those rash decisions that we make when we feel like we have our back against the wall, right? And I feel like it's relatable in so many different things that you just brought up because like even just the hustler mentality of it, right? You feel like your back's against the wall. You're the only one in the business. You're the only one that knows how to do it. You have to do all these things. You're making these rash decisions of like working 18 hours, even that at the end of the day, like that's a decision. Mm-hmm. Whereas now if you start just kind of taking the step back, right? And thinking about it, like, okay, it makes sense if I hire, it makes sense if I delegate and like have some structure and thought to how you're going to lay it out. I think so many of us, we just make this rash decision. It's probably what makes us good at like entrepreneurs anyway, because we actually take the freaking step, right? Like there are people out there that just don't do shit. And it's so funny. You've been talking about investing in real estate for 15 years. I've bought and sold 50 houses since you've been talking about it. You're never going to do it. But I feel like, you know, for us entrepreneurs that are action takers, I think one of our downfalls is we actually need to slow down every once in a while, right? We have to look at the big picture.
Yeah. And I think that to your point about the big picture, right? Sometimes as hustlers, we don't even see the big picture because we're so inundated with just the day that we're just trying to make it through the day, right? That I think there's that big difference between working in the business and on the business. And a lot of us hustlers love to work in the business because we feel validated, we feel vindicated, we feel our egos get fulfilled, and we're like the badasses. But we never work on the business. We don't know what tomorrow looks like. We don't even care. But the problem is you need to care because then you run into those decisions of not making the right call for the future of your business. Yeah. And that's what makes it a difference between an entrepreneur that has this business as just a high paying job and that of an actual true organization. Right. Yeah. And that was for me, something that I had to learn the hard way of hiring. Don't hire for what you have today, hire for where you're going. And that's where I think a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, make the mistake. And then I now use a strategy where I break my business every quarter. And what I mean by that is I think if I had 50 people come to my door today that all needed to be helped, they all wanted applications, rates came down to the 3s miraculously, and everybody wanted a loan. Could my business handle it? And if it couldn't, what are the systems, people, or processes that I need to put in place today that can support when it happens? Because my job as the CEO is to put my organization in a space where it can happen. Yeah. But I can't be afraid of when that happens. And so I think looking at it from that lens of you break your business before the business and your customers break your business, is a strategy that I found super helpful to say, okay, who's a person I need to hire today to fulfill when the company gets to 10 million in revenue? Who do I like? What does that person need? What are that attributes? How can they contribute to the organization? A lot faster than when the rates do drop and now I've got a tsunami of refinances.
Yeah, I love that concept. I don't know if I've heard of people talking about the fact that the systems you have in place now, you know, as the business grows and as your clients grow, it's not going to be the same, you know, system and processes that you have. Like the system obviously needs to adapt and grow and change. And I've heard the term like you're going to break your business or you're going to break your system, but not in the way that you just phrased it of like intentionally breaking it and intentionally looking for what would need to change in order to implement this. I think that's a great strategy that we can even use moving forward, Jake, within our company.
Yeah, it's really interesting that we're talking about this right now because we had this happen unintentionally. Our business broke a little bit, in a good way. Kind of like what you're talking about. We had with all the SMS stuff going on with 10 DLC, A2P regulations, and everything. We shifted away from SMS a little bit in the short term. Our platform just completely went down. And we have this VA as one of our setters for our wholesale company. Um, she just went out there and she starts implementing some of these social media strategies kind of all on her own. And all of a sudden, on any given day, she was forwarding 3 to 5 hot leads, which our closers are eating up. That's what they're used to. Boom, 34 hot leads right in the pipeline. And everybody's like, oh, this is amazing. And then they start working them and they're like, oh, fuck. Like, I need help here, 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 and here. And so, like, me
Right.
and Marie got on. I'm like, all right, we got to rework some stuff. And it put us into, you know, back to working on the business as far as the pipeline and the system, and let's get this in place and that, and we triaged it. Like, it was full blown ER mode.
Yeah.
And we got it up and running, but I can see how doing that quarterly would really just kind of compound over time.
Yeah, because what it does is it exposes your gaps, right? We're so used to the way, and again, it goes back to that saying of, when you want to get to another level, don't ask what you need to do, ask who do you need to become, right? And so now when you get to that level, when you're doing it quarterly, you're able to see who does your business need to become? What are the gaps? What are the processes that I'm not, thinking even in that space? Because it's not in front of me now versus later. And then you're not dealing with the triage. Now I have a triage tree, which is like, okay, what's the first thing that I need? Like, what artery is bleeding? Okay, I need to handle this first. And then I work my way down. So then by the time the quarter comes up, I'm like, okay, I'm in life support. I'm no longer in life support. Like, now I've got a stable patient in the ICU.
Maybe even hopefully out of the ICU by then.
Yeah, exactly.
Victoria, tell us a little bit real quick. What does your organization look like today?
Ooh, great question. So today I have 6 sales, acquisition, so 6 sales specialists. I have 2 processors, so that help on the operations side. I have a processing manager, I have an operations manager, and I have a fractional CFO.
Nice.
Yeah, so they help me on the finance side. And right now I'm looking to hire a sales manager position. So I'm in some interviews with that, because once you get to about that bandwidth of 6 to 7 people, now you need to start creating playbooks and systems and expanding, especially in this market. I think a lot of us tend to expand vertically, right? What's another net new that I can add to my business? But we need to start thinking about expanding horizontally. Like, what are the things that I could add to my business of what I'm currently already getting? So like for us, yes, we're doing purchases, but we could add a division of home equity lines of credit because a lot of people have trapped equity. We can add a division of investors because we know we have a lot of out-of-state investors that offer creative financing that maybe we put in a second position. We understand that, hey, you know what, instead of going to another market, let's leverage other markets within our state instead of going to a whole nother state, right? So I think it really is, when you are in a market where the economy is scarce and it impacts everybody, right? Inflation's impacting everybody. You got to start thinking, how can you make your own economy with your business as opposed to relying on the economy at hand? Yeah.
I love that advice. Any thoughts on what's happening with the interest rates? Just because that is your field of expertise.
Yeah. You want my crystal ball to come out?
I want your crystal ball. I'm just curious.
So
that's my last question, and then we'll see if Jake has any.
Yeah. So for we are going to start to see rates decline in Q2. So keep an eye on the job market, job losses. Those are going to be key indicators to tell us how low that needle's going to move. The good thing is inflation is coming down. We had a little spike up. I don't know what the holiday season is going to look like because a lot of us love to spend money on the holidays.
Oh, yeah.
So, which is not good for the GDP and where we're trying to go. However, I think a lot more Americans are preserving because student loan repayments are coming back. A lot more people are in debt because of, again, like just the pandemics. There were some layoffs this year. So paying attention to the job market is going to be your biggest indicator as to when rates are going to drop and how far. But I would anticipate Q2, we start seeing stuff in the vein of like 6 to 5%, which is why I'm encouraging a lot of people right now to purchase. I mean, I just even bought this year, purchase homes, because we saw in June of this year, when the rates went down by 0.5% to 1%, we saw mortgage applications increase by 10% in 3 weeks. Wow. So the demand is there, inventory is low, and this is just across the country. Yeah. And we're going to start to see a lot of those bidder wars come back, less motivated sellers come back. So, you know, I'm encouraging a lot of people from a strategic standpoint, look into investing if you have the opportunity to invest and can afford the payment, because it's all about affordability. Right. And then Q2, it's easier to refinance the balance of a home you already have or an investment that you already have, because now you're just increasing your profits and increasing your balance sheet in your household as well. So nice. That's my crystal ball.
Nice. I appreciate it. Absolutely. And we're actually, you know, we brought on a dispositions manager recently, and some of the strategy that I've been having her kind of push out is exactly what you just said. You know, people have been talking about the refinance potential for a while, but the affordability is key there, right? And then what that looks like in a few months. So I'm really glad to hear that that's consistent with what you're saying as well. One thing I did want to bring up, because you just said that you are looking to hire a sales manager, a book that you should definitely check out would be Sales Management Simplified by Mike Weinberg. That's kind of the current position I'm filling in the org chart, COO, but also like this is where I need to be right now in the short term. So as I was researching it and really getting up to speed on all of that, Sales Management Simplified, and that's for anybody listening to this, phenomenal book. It really breaks things down in a pretty strategic way. As far as other questions, man, I have so many. I think I could probably just keep going, but I would just ask: are there any, are there any like major things that you would want somebody to know? If you could just give one more, fuck up or something that would be impactful, what would that be?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit it on the head, where you're like, hey, I want to fulfill the sales manager before like the COO, before all the other org charts, right? I think a big mistake for me is I want to conquer everything yesterday. And so I had to take a step back even in my own org chart. I was like, oh, I need a COO, I need a CFO, I need a CMO, I need everybody. I need all hands on deck to take us to 10 million. And then I had to just kind of chunk it down. Like, what do you need today? Like, okay, Victoria, yes, that's what you need for 10 million, but 10 million is not going to show up today. So what do you need today? And what is going to make, like, I think separating between revenue and expenses is big, because we don't see operations as an expense, but operations is an expense because it's not bringing revenue to your business, right? So like, it's the chicken or the egg kind of conversation, but the reality is you need revenue in order to pay for it, because your business is your asset. You don't want to start digging into your personal funds to fund it just because you want to conquer everything all at once. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs do that. Number one, they don't have a separate bank account between business and personal. They just kind of glob it all together. And that was a big mistake in the beginning. Having your books done, right? As much as we don't want to pay the tax man and we don't want to pay and look at the finances, like, I think for us, it's important that we do that, because you can't manage what you don't measure. So like, for years, I didn't have a P&L. Like, I was the finance person that made everybody's finances amazing. But you look at my own balance sheet, I don't even have one. Like, you know, and I think that, like, I have clients that are gardeners and landscape architects, and they make people's homes beautiful, but then they come to the weeds because they're so tired. So get a specialist. Like, if you can't do it, get somebody to help you do it. And for me, I didn't know fractional CEOs, CMOs. I didn't know any of that existed. Like, for a while, I thought I had to commit to something. And so I would say definitely getting coaches, getting mentors is huge in the entrepreneurship journey, and being coachable. Like, I remembered I hired my first coach, and he told me, Victoria, you don't have to work 7 days a week. to start taking Sundays off. And I was like, there's no way. What the hell is this guy talking about? I'm going to make more money in less time. Crap. Like,
Right.
but I stood with him, not listening to him for a whole year, paid $20,000, not listening to him
Oof.
because I wasn't ready to be coached. I
Right.
wasn't ready to hear it. So I definitely think like, just check yourself, right? The difference between a friend and a mentor is a friend knows everything about you and still likes you. A mentor knows everything about you and knows how to guide you. And that's, I think for me as an entrepreneur, like we can't do this alone, right? Having amazing podcasts like this and what you guys are saying, like learning from my mistakes, man, we all make mistakes, but if we learn from each other, we can speed up that learning curve for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I think you just touched on so many great points there at the end because there was a lot of meat there, but I love how, it came down honestly to mindset of like be coachable, right? Be willing to change. And you mentioned it before. It's not like how do you do this? It's who do you need to become? And I think so many people on their entrepreneurial journey forget that. And they come and they have lofty dreams and they're like, I want to be here in 10 years and I want to have the financial freedom and I want to be hanging out on that beach and own this yacht and do this and do that. And they have all these dreams and they're like not willing to listen or be coachable or take the next steps, right? Or actually quit the W-2 job, make the hire, like do the things. And it's like, you're not ready. It's not that those things aren't attainable, but in order to get those things, you need to change and you need to be willing to take the advice. And that so much starts with like mindset and who you're ready to become. So I really love that.
Yeah, and a part of you has to die. That's what people don't forget. Like they don't realize, like a part of you has to die. You got to give up your friends that don't support you, which is sometimes the hardest thing, right? And Marie and I have talked about this where I'm a big believer in you have 3 groups of friends, right? You have your day ones, which are the ones that like, they push you, but they're just not ready to be in that same space. Then they're your ride or die. Like if you need to bury a body, they call you and say, Jake, like we got to go. You're saying, okay, I'm bringing the shovel. No questions asked, right? You got your day one friends. And then you've got, your regular friends that you kind of see on occasion, family, hey, how you doing? And then you've got your dream big friends, right? Your dream big friends are the ones that like Maria and I could share a dream together and not think we're crazy, although everybody else would think it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
And Maria and I are thinking, how are we going to get that? Like, how are you going to do this? Let's talk about strategies. And so I think that there's also a part in the entrepreneurial journey where you have to let go of who you were and you have to grieve that and you have to process it. And that's the gritty shit that nobody wants to deal with. Like they're like, oh, I'm reading a book. Yeah, that's great. But what are you going to do to implement it? What are you going to do to change it? And that's the hard part. So yeah, you hit it nail on the head right there, Marie, for sure.
I love it. I love it. All right. So we've gone definitely a little bit over the time, which is fine because you shared so many golden nuggets that I'm excited for the audience. But just real quick, if anybody needs a mortgage or wants to work with you, tell them how to get in touch with you, Victoria.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, Victoria M CEO. And also our company Instagram is Downtown Financial Group. So we're more than happy to help anybody, or even if they just want to spitfire some ideas, questions. Victoria, I had, some ideas about this. I'm all ears for helping to serve the community.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks a million again for being our guest.
Thank you so much for having me, you guys.
Quite welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Till the next podcast. See you guys.